You've come to it
Getting hot.
sort of by accident.
Well, that's certainly true by accident. For a long time, I had no idea what it was. I remember saying to Phil, what on earth is this ASMR that keeps appearing on the screen? And I forget how we found out. But anyway, when we did have this explanation about these different vibrations and effects, didn't make much sense to me. And then when I thought about it and realised that more and more people are finding something in these videos, I began to wonder. The one thing I've kept doing through my life is meditate. Now, one of the effects of meditation is that it quietens the mind. It brings the mind to rest. In fact, really, one of the stated aims of meditation is to bring rest to the mind. Now, you know how the mind's really going clickety-click almost non-stop in a lot of people. So just to bring rest to the mind, in other words, let it come to a quieter, more restful state is very beneficial. And that may lead to a deeper sense of peace. Now, if there's one thing this world is hungry for, it's peace, isn't it? The world is a restless place. So any form of rest other than just slumping in a chair, that sort of rest, or going to sleep, is it makes one feel better. And when you're listening to something that is restful, well, of course, it has an influence. So maybe what's at the root of it all is just this universal hunger for peace. Peace. Peace be with you. And what better way to enter a night's sleep than to be at peace?
You've said you don't mind at all if people fall asleep, do you?
Oh no, it's a compliment to me. I don't mind at all. And then we can elaborate a little bit on this, because associated with a sense of peace is a sense of completion, We stop trying to sort things out. We just sort of let go all that agitation, trying to figure out life and its problems. And strangely enough, when we just find a way of laying all that aside, almost without any effort of ourselves, we come to a peace. It really is associated with a sense of completion, a sense of the work's done, the day's work's done. Years ago, people would sit in front of the fire at the end of the day. At least the men would. The women would usually knit or do something like that, wouldn't they? And there was that sense of, I've done my work today, now it's just time to rest. Which again is a lovely preparation for a night's sleep, isn't it? Just what we want. So maybe it's as simple as that. Now, as to all the effects of your hair standing on end and that, well, I don't really go much for that. It's not my experience, and I wouldn't really put too much on that. But of course, people do, because people love these experiences, and people will swap stories about it and try to compare. But I'd rather sidestep all that and stick to this simplicity of peace.
I don't think many people have a choice, though, how they physically respond to certain things.
Yeah.
I think when you because not everybody has that ASMR experience when they're listening to some things. I think some people who I've kind of spoken to about it find it quite annoying. If you suggest, well, do you like it when people whisper or do you like it when people tap? They say, oh no, it's quite annoying for me.
Or intrusive, or worse.
Yeah, but I think when you do get a physical response, whether that's the hair standing up or a really deep sense of relaxation, I don't think you have a choice over whether or not that affects you in that way.
Well, yes, I can understand that. When people start to meditate, there are often effects that people notice. And the way I was taught, at any rate, is just to note that they're there, but carry on, come back to the technique of meditation, and then usually they manifest themselves for a while, and then they just sort of pass. And one goes to sleep or meditates, whatever it is.
But Dave, if somebody comes to it via ASMR, they understand and they know and they are affected by ASMR effects, and they're looking something up on YouTube and they find, the Whispering Queen, or one of John's biggest fans is Crystal ASMR, and she's amazing. She seems to produce a role play video every other day. There's an amazing number of roles that she does. But my question is, what is it that you go to an ASMR site for? Is it the pleasant tingle, or however it manifests, or is it, as John called it, peace, something that brings a feeling, let's just call it a feeling of well-being?
Well, firstly, I think you might be attracted towards it because it seemed odd in the first place. You think, well, there's a lady going to be tapping on this for an hour. And then you think, well, why? And then I've certainly, from my experience, when I arrived there and listened to it, I sort of felt like it was a bit soporific. It was a bit sort of relaxing, but dreamy relaxing like that. I don't know if that's how you experience it, or...
Kind of, yeah. But I think what you're asking is what do they go back for?
Yes.
Well, yeah. So when you first arrive to it, and then you think, well, there is a sensation here, which is what I described, and then you would go back to it partly out of habit, but also because of the fact that it's very relaxing. It will wind you down when your head is very busy. So perhaps that is sort of a kind of peace, an easy access to peace without having to really try too hard. Because sometimes when I listen to it, I will immediately sort of, I find it quite difficult to fight. But it's very just relaxing, you see. So it would be in order to get that feeling. Well, that sounds different, doesn't it?
What time of day would you listen?
I think normally in the evening, because it's not very conducive to you being up and about and hard at work, but you wouldn't necessarily be falling asleep. You'd want to listen to the content of some ASMR videos. Others are without any sort of information, aren't they, really?
Yeah, I think they're sort of falling into two distinct categories at the moment. One is this sort of contrived studio produced scenario based role play kind of ASMR. But then there's the unintentional ASMR, which I think is kind of where John falls in.
Yeah.
Now I find those particular, I don't go for the contrived stuff anymore. I think the unintentional ASMR content is much more interesting often. But I think you go back for those, for the feelings that you got initially. So it is almost
it's
like...
an entirely different thing to anything in life.
Yeah.
So you would go for a coffee if you needed to wake up, or some people would smoke a cigarette, or you would go for a walk or whatever. But it's another scope of existence entirely, where you sort of feel safe and maybe cared for. There's an element of trust and connection, which is very human, I think. Do you think?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, some of the notes that I made included things like that there's an intimacy about it, and even though it's being watched by lots and lots of other people, you always feel connected almost, because it's not really a group thing. tends to be one person.
Well, this is very
It
interesting.
is, isn't it? For I've picked up those words, yes.
This is very interesting.
It's extremely interesting, yes.
Can you remember the name of the lovely guy on a recent retreat? I remember walking along Coombs Road with him in the sunshine. He was quiet man, younger man. And on the last day of the retreat, I asked him had he got any recommendations on ASMR, because he responds to ASMR. And this was the key note that he came out. He says it's personal, it's intimate, and for the ASMR audience, he said it would be much better if John was speaking to them as one to one, as though they are the only person in the room. And also he said talk about sheep. that was his talk about something innocuous, but that you have a passion for. He says that would do it for me.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that unintentional thing, it is despite the content. It doesn't matter what's being talked about or what's being presented.
Yes.
It's the kind of how. Because I mean, I've watched unintentional ASMR. Have you seen the one with the Alexander technique lady?
I watched 2 hours of nail stamping with a German accent. I don't have my nails done.
No. So I think sometimes the
I
content.
know how now.
Well, yeah, exactly. But it can get you into things, and it can can suck you into the content, which I think is a little bit kind of how my relationship with you and the kind of things that you talk about has developed, because it started out as an ASMR thing and it's now become much more about the content.
Of course.
For me.
So it's a very useful, although you didn't intend it that way, a useful vehicle for it, really, because it's why should learning about stuff be tough and boring, or hard?
Sorry, what he's saying there.
I mean,
Rebecca,
ASMR is a method of delivery of things,
Of
But I know you're not forcing it that way, but that's how it appears, It's like, well,
Yes.
I could read it out, or I could make you read paragraphs of the same text, of the same, in a different medium, and it would be the same content, but it wouldn't have the same gentle vehicle of delivery, and I think that's effective as well as nice.
Two things I'm firing off now, things on my list, but two things. One is, how important is the actual quality of John's voice, because it's John's voice that people really like, that give the effect. And secondly, John, you have said that some of your favourite viewers are those who are not spiritual, not religious. They're atheists, you say.
Yeah.
You sort of prefer somebody coming to listen to you with no spiritual preference than an atheist. So how important is the quality of the voice when you're listening?
For me, it's essential, and I think it's improved as you've been making the videos. I think the sound quality's improved, the miking, but it's added to the ASMR side of things for me. I don't know if it's the same for you.
I think people prefer different things, so it's quite individual, but there are sort of camps that people are in. Now, some people can't bear chewing sounds, for example, so they wouldn't watch those, and some people, so there's different ways, and some people prefer maybe a background noise, which is a lower quality mic, the original old school ASMR things. But I think very important for me, yes, and usually the ones that I like are the ones where there's a mic about here, so a little mic, and where it's in the church, because the acoustics of that I prefer.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I mean, I like the acoustics in the church. The problem that you've got with that, and this is something that I wrote down, is that if you are presenting ASMR content on its own, when you do get an interruption, it can be quite jarring.
Yeah.
So when the door slams or when something happens and it's out of your control, that if it's an ASMR...
Lawnmowers outside.
Yeah. That
So long
can,
as it's not a massive spike in the audio, you know, I don't think then
it
that
has
would be
got-
too... Sometimes it does have an occasional...
We say, John says, we don't mind these background noises, the
you
church
probably
bells
don't
or the
even
door
know, you
slamming.
probably don't even
But
notice
actually,
them.
if you're listening as an ASMR listener,
Yeah.
it does jar, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Well, you get people into a sort of state. I'm sure if you could measure the brain waves, they would be different. Sort of in this state where you're very open and vulnerable and very sort of... It sounds much weirder than I'm intending it to go across, but sort of sleepy but very open,
It's
vulnerable.
very meditative.
Yeah,
You know, and I think that's why it works so well with the message,
of course.
because it is very meditative.
So sudden or
Almost
loud
subliminal.
noises would be a no.
Yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, spike in volume suddenly, it would make you kind of...
Yeah,
You know,
yeah.
So, what about there's an interviewer as well, and lots of people have commented on how that gets in the way. That's a distraction, and the music intro. It's if you're listening, particularly in the evening, say you want to go to sleep. You specifically want to go to sleep to John's voice, and you get this Liverpool accent, and you get the music.
Well, I don't find your voice particularly jarring at all, but I suppose you're up against a master. Yeah.
Well,
So,
no
you know,
competition.
so I don't mind it, but I think anything should ideally be quite smooth in terms of volume and in terms of, well, as if you were talking to a child going to sleep. That's how it feels to me. It's almost like you're in that very vulnerable, maybe a childlike feeling, isn't it?
I think in terms of introduction it's okay, but I think once you enter into that ASMR content, you have to stay there.
Yes.
So it's difficult to kind of pop back halfway in with a question on a different mic with a different volume, perhaps.
Agreed. Yeah, I think so.
Point taken. That's helpful. Thank
But
you.
it doesn't matter so much about the music in the beginning, I think.
Now then, Rebecca, you said three very interesting things. I've forgotten the third one. I've been trying to remember them. You listed three qualities. You feel safe, cared for, and something else. Do you remember? Well, anyway, it was the same. It was a similar sort of...
Connected, was it?
Probably connected.
Could be.
Well,
Vulnerable.
you see, coming back again to the practice of meditation, those are exactly the feelings, those are exactly the things that arise out of somebody that is well practiced in meditation, such as I am. And of course, these are all fundamental human needs, aren't they? We all want to be safe, cared for, loved, connected. In one word, it's just love, isn't it? That's what we all children wanting to be loved, aren't we? Like a mother, like a lullaby before we go to sleep. And really, that's exactly what spirit conveys. Remember, Jesus called the Spirit the Comforter. The Comforter. And at my best, I would hope that is conveyed in my voice, because I'm so soaked in it myself, the comfort of spiritual experience, that willy-nilly something of that must come through me. And, well, perhaps that just adds to the explanation.
Yeah.
To be honest, and without wanting to make too profound a comment, I think that's what people are looking for ultimately in spirituality.
Of course it is, yes.
And in an ASMR sense.
Yes.
And I think very often, for me particularly, the ASMR thing starts when you're young.
Yes.
Whether it's something that it kind of triggers a memory almost from sitting in a doctor's surgery while they're writing a prescription, or being in a library. Or
We're sort of almost saying the intent of the caring, or the comfort of it, and the way that is conveyed through the videos, that there's something in that where you feel vulnerable and cared for. Well, that's what I said, I suppose. But then sometimes it can occur when there isn't any intent, like a pen writing on a paper,
exactly,
or my geography teacher when I was in high school, I had terrible trouble staying awake because she had such a lovely way about her and such a relaxing voice. I found it. I was just I just felt happy. I suppose it was like this. So sometimes it's not about the intent, is it? It's literally just audible things that are a certain
that put you into that river of feeling. That.
Agreed.
But I think that's why it's almost a perfect marriage between a spiritual content that isn't necessarily specifically aimed at one spiritual path, and those kind of needs in people to have that met. Does that make sense?
It does, yeah, of course. I think
it's wonderful.
It feels like something that should happen. It feels like a need that we have, not just in a sad way, as if, I wish I was a child again and that I was safe, because there's something about that that's clinging to innocence, and perhaps it has a negative connotation that you don't want to be in the world anymore. But I think maybe it's a need that we all have, that we just don't really have a ritual or an everyday occurrence for, like maybe we should be in a meditative state or in this sort of shortcut to that feeling.
And I think there's so little of it in the real world and in the modern world, that when people find it through YouTube, I mean, it's no surprise to me that it's absolutely burgeoned to the point that it has, even though it annoys me on one level, because I think there's a little bit of kind of bandwagon jumping. But for the wrong reasons, whereas this doesn't feel like the wrong, this kind of feels like the right sort of delivery. Whereas sometimes I think that, you kind of look and there's like hundreds and hundreds of ASMR channels now.
Well, it's hijacking a feeling for maybe, but I suppose who are we to say what morality or what,
But it proves that there are a lot of people looking for this feeling.
The opposite of the news.
Yeah.
What about that?
Yeah.
The opposite of the news. Because it's not stressful.
The opposite of what, dear?
The news.
Oh, the news, yes.
It
is rather, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes, that's so aggressive, isn't it? Everybody at each other's throats.
But it's designed to make you fearful, so surely that's the opposite of love, right?
Well, yes.
Maybe.
This is the opposite, isn't it? Fear not, all is well. Comfort, be comforted.
Something interesting you said there, Rebecca. Did you say there's no ritual in our modern busy lives, our always-on device ridden lives of space, comfort, safety?
Like this strange creature until you stop and think about it, and then you're on your to-do list, or you're late, or like I was this morning.
But it almost feels like it should be part of life. It perhaps was more. You talk in one of the videos about the fact that the church is less popular. People don't spend time. Nothing closes on a Sunday anymore. Nobody has those moments, those times where they stop. And maybe there's some part of people that, a massive part of people that still want that. They need that. I think it's more of a need than a want.
Well, undoubtedly, Dave. Yes, the heart of man is restless until he finds his rest in thee, and this restlessness, if not met to some degree, drives us crazy, doesn't it?
We need to. It's almost like we're driven towards being restless. We have to try not to.
If you feed yourself on the news, you've not got an alternative to it. I mean, it does drive people. You get to screaming pitch, don't you? You end up not trusting anybody, not loving anybody, resentful of it all.
It's always breathing as well, isn't it?
Critical
We
of
for-
everything.
Sorry,
Breathing, well.
we forget to.
Sorry, what connection with what? Breathing?
We forget to breathe as well, talking about how you feel physically. I forget to breathe when I'm worrying about things, you know.
Why don't you die then?
Well, you know, I breathe shallowly, you know.
Yes.
That's probably a better way of putting it. Well, you forget, don't you, until you actually think, I'm here. You know,
Yes, we do.
You
Well,
never.
we are, one way I like to put it is we're simply absent, aren't we? We're not present.
That's true.
We're absent. We're lost in thought.
That's perhaps what ASMR is as well, isn't it? Is that the only thing you can focus on is the video that you're seeing or listening to. So it becomes a focal meditation, doesn't it?
Yes.
It's true. It's very. It doesn't allow for distraction really.
That's interesting.
You see, that's exactly what meditation is. And focusing on that, your own mind, all this, it just settles down for lack of attention.
It's similar to a mantra
Yes,
almost.
exactly. Yes.
Yes.
Except that mantra is repeated,
Yes.
but trying to hold the mantra,
Yes.
I've found can be quite difficult.
Yes.
Because of the intrusion of thoughts and
Exactly.
feelings. Whereas following an ASMR
Yes.
mantra
Yes.
is a lot easier.
Exactly. Well, there you are. You've got a very sort of effective substitute for a meditation. It's just what it is, isn't it?
And I think that's why some people in the comment sections in a lot of John's videos have asked him and did ask him to lead a meditation. And I think they want that. It's like, I can't do it, I just can't hold the mantra, I can't make myself concentrate.
Yes, yes,
Will you just talk and let me meditate?
Even just to be silent throughout most of it, with the lead in, you know.
Yeah.
If you just sit and be
See,
silent on camera, you love that.
Those gaps are really, they are filled with ASMR content.
Well, that's
the gaps.
fascinating as well because of course I've listened to the comments and I now am very careful to not edit out the gaps.
Yeah.
They're pregnant, aren't they?
Absolutely.
They're full of
Yeah.
both anticipation and peace at the same time.
For me, one of the interesting things about the content is that John talks a lot about the silence, the presence of that, and that comes through in the gaps because you then listen to that silence.
I think sometimes I certainly can get in everyday life frustrated with nothing's happening, because that's the normal thing, isn't it? Unless you force yourself to be just okay for a moment. So it's actually good practice to see that happen and to enjoy that happening, and it's good practice for your own sort of meditative moment, or like the so the little pauses are actually useful as well as
Indeed,
demonstrative.
It's almost like having a stillness coach, and you embody what it is simply to pause. You can tell your mind. You can tell you just paused. Your mind's not racing, thinking about what shall I say next. You've just paused, and you're not scrabbling around to the next thing. You're just at rest, and then something else pops out of your mouth. John doesn't. Do you know when I send the edit through to John to preview before it goes out? Very often, John says to me, "Did I say that?" You can't recall, can you? What it was?
I never know what Phil's going to ask me. We don't rehearse it at all.
Oh, that's interesting. That's what I was going to ask, actually.
Nothing's prepared at all.
Wow.
That's why I'm always nervous at the end whether I made a mess of it, Phil. Aren't I? And you say it was all right, but I'm still left a bit nervous until I see the thing, and then I think, gosh,
Yes.
better than I thought.
Yes.
It's impressive how you hold a thread for so long as well, because I would forget, I think, halfway through my 4th paragraph, I would think,
Forget the subject
is
line
this?
sometimes.
Well, we're talking
7 tangents
Forget-
later.
Forget what the question
Where
is.
are we?
Yeah.
We've gone the wrong way. Am I right in saying you wouldn't produce different videos for that? You would use the same videos. So then you're saying, to me, it feels a little bit like if your intention is to get to talk about these things, you think they're important and they might help people, but also that the vehicle for delivery happens to be ASMR, then raising the profile of that in a way that would be smart or thinking about it is actually really only helping the message to get out a bit further. I don't think it sullies it or it makes it.
It doesn't pull
I don't
the
think
rug
it's
on the
too
message.
pure. I think that's just, it's like marketing. It's not, it's not necessarily a dirty thing.
Yeah.
You're not trying to sell things to people. You're not trying to do something underhand. And so why should it not be helped?
ASMR friendly.
ASMR friendly. That's a good term, John.
Because it's a search term more than anything else. If you wrote at the end of your title unintentional ASMR, people are searching for that because that is a thing. And
It
so
should be on. It's not on our list of what do you call that list of
Tags.
tags.
Yes, it is.
Is it?
Yes.
Oh,
well, that will work then, I'm sure.
It does
Yeah.
work.
For me, the questions are important, so long as the volume isn't suddenly changing to increase in the middle. So I think you could still, you can turn your volume down perhaps if you needed.
I was going to say that I don't think your delivery is has a non-ASMR quality about it.
I agree.
I think that your presence and your delivery and your quality is there as well, especially the connection between you. And I think if there was that, if you were similar in terms of the tech, it would only add to the videos. I don't
agree.
think it would remove anything
Yeah.
from it.
I agree, wholeheartedly agree, yeah. I think it's Bez saying that it's already fantastic as it is in terms of if you just look at it technically as an ASMR exercise, it's already very, very good, clearly. So, not really sure.
I mean, what I was going to suggest, what I wrote down was maybe continuing with the stuff in church, the conversations with John Butler in church as the kind of core base, but then to also perhaps do some stuff here that isn't going to be interrupted by a door banging, that isn't going to be, that's going to have all those things taken out. Maybe a reading from some of, I don't know what poems or from
The book.
from the book,
I was going to
that.
suggest
we
that.
could go out on a quiet day and just lean on a gate and talk about sheep, couldn't we? Wouldn't that work?
It's got to be in there.
Windy.
Too many interruptions.
No, it's got to be in almost a soundproof, controlled environment for the sound quality. I've also stuck John's head in a black in a cardboard box with, I think it's under there actually. I'll take it away with me. We've credit where credit's due. We've tried, haven't we, John? We've been in the bathroom with foam. We've been here. We've blanketed the windows and here turned the fridge off.
Yeah.
To get and we've got a Zoom recorder, and but what imagine. Every day, every time you've got a client coming to your studio, you have to set up all your gear each time. Well, of course, that's not the way to do it. You need a sort of a space where it's all set up, and you've got the foam and the acoustic padding that you need to get that quality of voice. I do take the point, and I think we have to take it seriously, John, that whilst many people aren't bothered by a banging door in church or the bells, whatever, for a different audience, that it's not very considerate. We should also have content, I think, that is acoustically kind to people, let's put it that way. And that's just a practical issue that I can address. So
and most people, I don't know if you use headphones.
Yeah.
it's all
Can do.
headphones. You know, well,
I don't mind either.
I've got noise cancelling headphones that I use specifically for
You see,
listening. to
John, this is very important. Most people, and they're watching and listening on portable devices a lot as well. You know, they don't have the PC or the Mac on. It's very often on mobiles or tablets as well, and that's when you're listening also on phones, isn't it?
And the quality of headphones has improved a lot, which obviously shows up any kind of problems that you're having technically. You know.
I think with that being said, that's important to notice, but I think a lot of people like a lo-fi experience as well, so long as there's nothing too loud or intrusive.
That's true.
You don't necessarily need to have the greatest of technology and the best ability for it, because clearly people are listening on high quality headphones to what you're doing already.
And let's not forget that most ASMR experiences in the real world, the ones where maybe they started when you were younger, happened in the real world. They didn't happen wearing headphones. They happened in school and they happened in church. I mean, when you were talking at the beginning of this, I was getting it. I was getting the ASMR response when you were just listening to it. So it doesn't, you know, I mean, we don't want to get hung up on the, you know, because just sort of being...
It's worth knowing though, but yeah, that's right.
And you were saying the church, the ambience of the church and the background sound,
yes.
it can add to some people's ASMR.
Sorry, dear, you say you first picked up ASMR for me when we were talking about meditation, or when you came to me to meditate.
No, just at the start when we
just now.
Just now.
Oh, just now.
Yeah, when you were talking,
yes.
When we first started this conversation, you were talking. I was getting an ASMR response
Really?
while we were just sort of sat here. So
Yeah.
You know.
You didn't get that from me, see.
Well, I did a little bit, but it's
He's
not
highly
just
triggered
about...
constantly.
I am.
That's
Sorry,
right.
just tell me, what was that? Just describe what
How
is
did
the
it feel?
ASMR reaction, yes.
I just got like sometimes it can feel like water running down your spine, sometimes
Yes.
it can feel like your scalp's tingling.
Yes.
Sometimes you just become incredibly relaxed incredibly quickly, and you don't feel like you want to have any involvement in the conversation, you just want to listen. You know, so
It's very powerful.
Yeah.
Very powerful, yeah. Very powerful vehicle for getting to speak.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you've got it. And I think that's important as well. It's not like you can, you know, I don't think anyone can be a good ASMR practitioner. Is that the right phrase? I don't think it's something that if you just buy a mic, you can do. Because I think that's my point with everybody sort of jumping on the bandwagon. They're kind of trying to do it because they can see it's either lucrative or popular. And so they go, oh, I'll do that. And it'll be like tattooing. You know, I'll just buy a tattoo machine and tattoo people. It doesn't work like that. You know, you've obviously got a quality about your presentation that has that in it.
Naturally so.
Yeah, it was already there. It was already fully formed. It just didn't.
And that's why the unintentional stuff is quite appealing to me, because it's not contrived in any way. It just is. There's an interview with Rowan Williams, you know, the ex-archbishop.
Oh yeah, no, I've
Have you seen that
yeah.
one? And he's being interviewed about being
I'm pretty sure
Welsh.
he confirmed me as well. That was quite a relaxing thing.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, he's...
In the 90s, in the 90s, I'm sure.
Has he got that quality?
The ex-archbishop, yeah, very much so, yeah. But again, similar message, you know, but an incredibly charismatic personality coming through, this fantastic voice.
You have to be quite genuine, I think.
Yeah.